Welcome into the Wiltfong Whip Around with Steve Wiltfong. I'm your host, Josh Newberg, and today is Tuesday, December 17th. Yes, today's Tuesday. No, Steve did not go into the transfer portal. It was just a busy day, and we are taping the Wiltfong Whip Around today. So just sit back and relax. We're going to talk about the transfer portal today. It has been absolutely buzzing. There's a lot to get to, so let's bring in my man, Steve Wiltfong. Steve, I know you've been working the phones, and we're going to switch it up today. This is going to be a transfer portal focused show. So let's talk about one of the most coveted quarterbacks in the portal right now. That's Kaidon Salter. He just wrapped up that visit to Syracuse. He's currently at Colorado. He arrived on Monday. Steve, he's the number 10 ranked quarterback in the portal. I know there's been a lot of teams involved, but is it kind of coming down to these two? What are you hearing?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm hearing. Had a great visit to Syracuse over the weekend, talking to sources that spent time with them. Fran Brown is heading up that recruitment, Josh. And if you look at the schools Kaidon Salter's looking at, he's in on the right programs, right? Kyle McCord led the nation in passing. Shedeur Sanders checks in at number 3. He sees an opportunity to step into a place and be prolific right off the bat with Syracuse. Again, Fran Brown leading the charge. There is not a better head coach recruiter in America. Maybe you can argue there's some that are as good, but Fran Brown, the way he builds relationships, the way he communicates with young men and their families, and then coming off a 9-win season, an explosive passing offense, looking to take another step forward next year. Because if you look, man, they had a tough loss to Boston College, Stanford. That could have been Syracuse playing against SMU for a spot in the college football playoff this year. Kaidon Salter, a guy that they hope keeps them playing at the same level. But Colorado also seeking a 10th win in this bowl season. They got Kaidon out to campus on Monday. His visit goes into today, Tuesday, and certainly the Buffaloes have a lot to sell there, getting them around Deion Sanders and that program, that offense, and some of the playmakers that they brought in. I like Syracuse going into the Colorado visit. I think it's up to Colorado to flip that script on Fran Brown and company early this week.
Yeah, because Colorado signed Julian Lewis, so they kind of got to dance around that a little bit, but we'll see. I mean, he's on campus now. Steve, a lot of quarterback dominoes are falling. Do you think that Kaidon Salter is in a position to make a decision shortly after this visit wraps up, or do you think he could sneak 1 or 2 more visits in?
I mean, he certainly has a timetable to sneak other visits in if he plans to do so. I just haven't heard that. I think Syracuse and Colorado are viewed as the front runners, and after this Colorado visit, sources are expecting him to make his decision.
All right, all eyes on Kaidon Salter down the stretch here. Let's talk about Washington State quarterback transfer John Mateer. When he hit the portal, he instantly became the number 1 player in the transfer portal ranking. So Pete Nako's reporting that he's visiting Oklahoma. Steve, what's the intel here? Who else is involved?
Well, we feel strongly about Oklahoma's position here for Mateer. Now, we were a little surprised that there wasn't a do not tag label when he entered the portal, which allows other programs to communicate with him. Obviously, his offensive coordinator is now at Oklahoma. So if he were to entertain another school, Nakos points to a place like Miami. The Hurricanes would certainly have the firepower to get involved and could point towards the success that Cam Ward had this year.
Yeah, but it sounds like there's a lot of relationships with that Oklahoma staff. I mean, would they be willing to come over the top with a dollar amount that maybe Mateer couldn't turn down?
Well, I don't know if there's a mafia style offer for Mateer in his recruitment and his process. I think that a lot of people thought that if you hire his offensive coordinator from Washington State, Ben Arbuckle, that you would ultimately land Mateer. It seems to be lining up that way. And maybe the do not tag is kind of a similar deal to Caleb Williams. You knew he was going to transfer to USC and follow Lincoln Riley, but there were just some reports, hey, Wisconsin's in the mix here to keep it above board.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye on John Mateer as he is now the number 1 player in the transfer portal. All right, let's move on. Let's talk some Michigan portal recruiting right now, because Michigan still has not found an answer at quarterback. They lost Billy Edwards to Wisconsin. Originally, when he hit the portal, leaving Maryland, it was expected he was going to end up at Michigan, but Wisconsin came in, swooped in, and he is headed there. Where does Michigan turn next at quarterback?
Well, there's several options. First, you look at DeQuan Finn. He's a Detroit native, won a high school state championship at King High, was a standout at Toledo, led them to the MAC championship game, was at Baylor this past year. He's someone that you certainly put on your board. Another interesting name for Michigan is Brendan Lewis, Nevada's starting quarterback this past year, threw for over 2,000 yards and 16 touchdowns. He's also a dual threat guy with over 1,500 career rushing yards and 15 scores. Played 3 years at Colorado, 2 years at Nevada. I think Michigan's kicking tires on Brendan Lewis right now. And a third name, a new name, Josh, is Zach Calzada. Not a new name to us, a new name to the portal. He's been at Auburn. He's been at Texas A&M. The last 2 years, he's been at Incarnate Word. Saw him play his playoff game on TV the other day. He had a fantastic season for them. Over 65% completion percentage, over 3,700 yards passing, 35 touchdowns. He's reinvented himself at Incarnate Wood. I think that Incarnate Word, and I think that Michigan's a program that could get involved with him as well.
All right, so we'll see what Michigan does at the quarterback position. Now I want to talk about Fernando Mendoza. He's the number 2 ranked quarterback in the transfer portal. He played for Cal last year. I thought he was great. He has a really big frame, big arm. He's a leader, and now he's in the transfer portal. Steve, what's the intel around Mendoza?
Well, he took a visit to Indiana last weekend, and all signs pointed towards the Hoosiers being in great shape for Mendoza. But this is in the recruitment of Mendoza.
I always liked Miami in this one. I know they haven't been involved yet, but he's from Miami. Played in the ACC last year at Cal. I know that sounds crazy, but Cal's in the ACC. So we'll have to see where Mendoza falls. Let's move on. Talk about some other highly ranked guys. We've had a lot of transfers coming off the board. You nailed your pick on Micah Hudson. You nailed that pick on Dylan Thieneman. You nailed that Williams Winnari pick. So let's get into it with some more available targets. Now we'll start with Eric Singleton, the number 2 player in the transfer portal rankings right now. And he's coming off a busy week of visits. He was at Auburn. He was at Ole Miss. He was at Miami. I believe he's currently on campus at Texas. So number 2 player, wide receiver, Eric Singleton, leaving Georgia Tech. What's the intel here, Steve?
Well, unless a massive NIL offer comes in here at the end of the cycle, I think that Auburn is the program to really keep an eye on for Eric Singleton. He's got a long-standing relationship with Kenyatta Watson. Kenyatta Watson helped bring him over to Georgia Tech early in his recruitment. His teammate, Tay Seymour, his roommate, went into the portal from Georgia Tech. He's going to add a lot of speed to Auburn's secondary. Hugh Freeze's offense, Landon Jackson Arnold out of the portal. A lot of excitement around the Auburn program right now. That's where I'm leaning at this point as he continues through his process and continues to have conversation with schools about NIL and things of that nature.
All right, let's talk about wide receiver leaving NC State, KC Concepcion. He's the number 3 ranked player in the transfer portal rankings, and he visited Alabama. That was a big one. That was his first trip. And then Monday, he arrived at Colorado. Does Coach Prime have a shot at landing one of the best wide receivers in the transfer portal?
They absolutely do. We talked about that on the last Wiltfong Whip Around visit to Alabama last weekend, but Colorado was one of the programs heavily involved for Concepcion, getting them out to campus, a major priority for Deion Sanders and company as they look to quickly reload and be competitive in that Big 12 again next year.
Steve, Colorado's landed 1 commitment so far as we tape this on a Tuesday. I mean, hey, if you're watching this later, they've landed more. As of taping, they've landed 1. When do we expect Concepcion to make a final decision here?
Well, our colleague Pete Nakos has reported that Concepcion could make his decision after the new year.
All right. We will see what he does. You guys let me know. Where do you think KC Concepcion is going to land? Will it be Colorado or Alabama? You guys let me know. All right. Nick Anderson, he's the number 10 ranked player in the portal. He's leaving Oklahoma, Steve, wide receiver. He's talented, and he's got a lot of teams looking at him. Who is in the thick of it here for Nick Anderson?
From what I know, it's going to be Texas A&M or LSU. He visited both last weekend, talked to a source that said he could decide as early as today. So even By the time this comes public, this video, he could be off the board. But A&M or LSU, a toss-up, I'm told.
All right. Max Klare, the number 1 tight end in the transfer portal, number 13 overall. What's the latest on him?
Well, he's at Louisville today, was at Michigan on Monday, took recent visits to Texas and Texas A&M, expecting him, after talking to sources, to decide sometime this week. Don't sleep on Coach Braum and the Cardinals. He's got a former high school coach that was at Purdue that's now on the staff at Louisville as well. And what Jeff Braum and company have done in 2 years at Louisville with the offense and what they've done on the field, 18 wins, competed for the ACC title last year. I could see him at Louisville, but certainly Texas A&M, and Michigan giving him a lot to think about. He was a former Duke commit, so he knows Mike Elko and those guys pretty well in College Station.
All right, let's talk about a former 5-star, Deuce Robinson. He's leaving USC, played there for 2 years. Flash had some good moments, never really lived up to the 5-star hype, but there's still a lot of confidence that he can, and he is the number 15 ranked player in the transfer portal. Now, Steve, he's coming off a visit to Arizona State. Who else is involved in this one?
Yeah, he spent a couple days at Arizona State, got around their quarterback, Levitt, for a little bit, Kenny Dillingham in the staff. He's a Phoenix product, a lot of familiarity with Arizona State. They got a bye. They're playing in the college football playoff, the Big 12 champs. A lot to be excited about with Arizona State. Another program I'm definitely watching in the Deuce Robinson sweepstakes is Florida State. I expect him on the Seminoles campus by the end of the week. They'll be one to watch as well.
He's a Florida State legacy, as his father, Dominic Robinson, played for the Seminoles in the 2000s. So we'll see. Alabama was heavily involved in that recruitment, Texas as well. So I don't think Deuce Robinson has any he's not searching for offers here. A lot of interest. So we'll see what happens with him. Now, Steve, you had a story on Justice Haynes, the top running back. He's leaving Alabama. What are you hearing? Is there a chance he could stay in the SEC?
Yeah, absolutely. He's at Ole Miss today, and he is going to visit South Carolina on Thursday. And then you have Michigan coming up this weekend. Those are the 3 prominent programs in the mix for Justice Haynes. Then you have Ohio State, who hosted Quentin Joyner, USC transfer portal running back, earlier this week or over the weekend. He's at Texas Tech this week. So I think you got Ohio State and Texas Tech for Joyner, and then Ohio State trying to get into the Justice Haynes sweepstakes here, trying to get him on campus and make a move on the 3 programs just mentioned.
All right. Now, everybody looking for an edge rusher, and one of the most coveted edge rushers in the portal right now is Will Helt. He's leaving Purdue. What are you hearing on Helt?
Well, he's taken visits to at least 3 schools: LSU, Texas A&M, Clemson. Dabo Swinney and his staff just went into the portal for the first time at a non-quarterback position and landed Southeast Missouri State wide receiver Tristan Smith. They're one of the front runners here for Will Helt. Texas A&M certainly giving him a lot to think about. Talked to a source this morning that thought it would come down to those 2 programs.
All right, let's talk about the number 2 running back in the portal, Ahmad Hardy. His recruitment's really heating up. There's a couple of SEC teams involved here. What's the latest on Hardy?
Well, he took a visit to Ole Miss, and that really set the tone for him in his process. I would mark the Rebels as the leader right now, but he is going to visit Kentucky next weekend. He says his decision's most likely going to come down to those 2 programs, so we'll see if the Wildcats can make a move on Ole Miss when he visits this weekend. And that'll do it for this episode of the Wiltfong Whip Around Transfer Portal Edition. We will be back sometime after the holiday, so we appreciate you tuning in this year 2024. I'm so excited to be at On3, arrived in April, and we very much appreciate your following of the Wiltfong Whip Around on the On3 Recruits channel. Please make sure you hit like and subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel for the latest and best information from the recruiting trail. Happy holidays, Happy New Year.